Marcus Chen had broken 17 bones in his career, none of them his own. But on day 127 of his imprisonment at Iron Gate Correctional, 5 men surrounded him in the showers, and for the first time in his life, he had to let them break him. Water mixed with blood swirled down the drain. Fists hammered into his ribs, his face, his kidneys. Marcus kept his hands at his sides. Every instinct screamed to fight back, to use the skills that had made him untouchable in 2 Olympic Games and 37 underground matches. But he couldn't, not yet. Through the steam and violence, he saw him. Viper Crow stood outside the shower room, arms crossed, watching through the reinforced glass like a director admiring his work. The Confederate Brotherhood leader smiled, then gestured to one of his men holding a cell phone. Stream it. Let the world see what happens to his kind in my house. The world knew Marcus as the Phantom, undefeated, untouched, a ghost who disappeared before opponents could land a strike. But what the world didn't know was that Marcus Chen had been counting the days. Day 127, right on schedule. And Viper Crow had just made his first mistake. Special Agent Sarah Rodriguez stood in a warehouse in El Paso, staring at 16 body bags. The victims were all low-level dealers, their throats cut with surgical precision. No fingerprints, no witnesses. Just a calling card left on each corpse, a hand-drawn viper coiled around a Confederate flag. The cartels were terrified. Someone was moving into their territory, someone more organized, more ruthless. And the trail led straight into the American prison system, to a facility in the Deep South, where the guards looked the other way and the Brotherhood ran everything. For 10 years, the DEA had tried to infiltrate Viper Crow's network. 14 agents, all failures. Some were made immediately. 3 were hospitalized. 1 never came out. Rodriguez needed someone different. Someone who could endure hell without breaking. Someone with nothing left to lose. She found him teaching self-defense to at-risk kids in Atlanta, in the same neighborhood where his father had been beaten to death 16 years earlier. The case was never solved. Marcus was 16 when it happened, forced to watch from across the street as 4 men in white hoods left his father bleeding on the pavement outside their family restaurant. The police called it a robbery gone wrong. Marcus knew better. When Rodriguez approached him with the Iron Gate operation, Marcus didn't hesitate. "When do I start?" "You understand what this means?" Rodriguez asked. 6 months minimum, possibly longer. Viper will target you immediately because of your race. You'll be isolated, abused, degraded, and you can't fight back. Not once. If you do, the cover's blown. Marcus touched the phoenix tattoo on his chest, over his heart. His mentor had given him that tattoo the day he won Olympic gold. The old man, a former DEA agent himself, had told him, "True strength isn't defeating your enemy. It's protecting those who can't protect themselves, even if it costs you everything." That mentor had died 2 years ago, investigating a prison gang connection. Another unsolved case. "I can handle it," Marcus said. Rodriguez looked at him, this man who'd spent his entire life perfecting control, and wondered if she was sending him to his death. But they were out of options. Viper's network had expanded to 5 states. The body count was rising. Someone had to stop him. If you're already hooked by this story, hit that subscribe button now. This investigation gets darker than anyone could have predicted. Marcus entered Iron Gate on a Tuesday morning in October, processed under a fabricated identity. Assault charges. 2-year sentence. Quiet. No gang affiliations. Perfect prey. He lasted exactly 90 minutes before Viper noticed him. The moment happened in the yard during first recreation. Marcus was standing alone, learning the layout, when a basketball rolled to his feet. He picked it up. 7 men surrounded him, all wearing the Brotherhood's ink lightning bolts, Confederate flags, white power symbols covering their arms. Viper Crow stepped forward. He was 52 but moved like a man 20 years younger. Military bearings still evident despite 2 decades behind bars. His eyes were the coldest thing Marcus had ever seen. "You picked up our ball," Viper said, voice soft and southern and dangerous. "That means you're playing for us now, understand?" Marcus understood perfectly. This was the test. How he responded in the next 10 seconds would determine everything. He held out the basketball. "I don't play." The yard went silent. Even the guards stopped moving. Viper's smile was worse than his anger would have been. "Everyone plays in my house. But you? You're gonna play different." He turned to his men. "Boys, I think we just found our new entertainment." That night, they came for him. 4 men dragged Marcus from his cell at 2 a.m. No guards intervened. They took him to the workshop, an industrial space filled with tools and machinery that hummed through the night. Viper was waiting, sitting on a workbench, reading a book. Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment. He closed it carefully, set it aside. "You know what I hate most about your kind?" Viper asked conversationally. "The arrogance. Coming into our country, taking our jobs, pretending you belong. My daddy taught me something when I was young. He said the world has an order. When that order gets disrupted, it's our duty to restore it." Marcus said nothing. His DEA training had prepared him for this. Don't engage. Don't give them anything to work with. Become invisible. "Strip," Viper ordered. Marcus didn't move. 2 men grabbed him. They found the phoenix tattoo immediately. Viper studied it, traced the design with one finger. A phoenix, rising from ashes. How poetic. "Let's see if you can rise from what's coming." They beat him for 40 minutes. Methodical, careful. Nothing that would show too badly in the morning count. Ribs, kidney shots, pressure points. Marcus focused on his breathing, on the meditation techniques that had carried him through Olympic pressure. He visualized each blow as a step closer to justice. When they finished, Viper crouched beside him. "This is day 1. You've got a long stay ahead of you. The question is, how long before you break?" Marcus looked up through swollen eyes and thought about his father, about his mentor, about the 16 bodies in El Paso, about every victim of Viper's empire. "I won't," he whispered. Viper laughed. "That's what they all say." But here's what Viper didn't know. What no one except Rodriguez knew. Marcus had spent 2 years preparing for this mission. Not just physical training, but psychological conditioning that went beyond anything the DEA had ever attempted. He'd studied Buddhist monks who'd endured torture without breaking. He'd worked with psychologists specializing in trauma resistance. He'd rewired his own mind to separate his body from his sense of self. Every morning for 2 years, Marcus had practiced a meditation his mentor had taught him. He visualized himself as water, formless, adaptable, impossible to break, because there was nothing solid to shatter. When violence came, he would flow around it. When degradation came, he would let it pass through him. The phoenix tattoo wasn't just decoration. It was a reminder. To rise, you first have to burn. And Marcus was willing to burn for as long as it took. 3 weeks into his imprisonment, Viper escalated. He assigned Marcus to the kitchen detail, the worst job in Iron Gate. 18-hour shifts, steam, grease, and humiliation. But it was also exactly where Marcus needed to be. The kitchen was where Viper's operation moved its product. Every Tuesday and Friday, supply trucks arrived with food shipments. Hidden inside the industrial refrigerators, beneath false panels, came pure methamphetamine from the Bratva, the Russian mob operating out of Brighton Beach. The drugs were repackaged in the kitchen, hidden in commissary items, ramen noodle packages, coffee containers, even religious books, and distributed through the prison's mail system to outside dealers. Marcus documented everything with his mind. He had eidetic memory, a gift that had made him unstoppable in competition. Every face, every schedule, every piece of the puzzle stored perfectly in his recall. But the price of this access was steep. Viper made him cook every meal for the Brotherhood, made him serve them while they ate, made him clean their tables while they discussed their business openly. knowing he couldn't do anything with the information. The degradation was constant, creative, designed to break his spirit before his body. "You know the best part?" Viper said one night, watching Marcus scrub floors. "Even if you told someone what you're seeing, who'd believe you? You're a convict. I'm a businessman with a legitimate prison enterprise. You're invisible, Ghost. And invisible men can't change anything." Marcus kept scrubbing, but that night, back in his cell, he had his first contact with the outside. A new guard had started, a young former Marine named James Mallory. He was the inside man Rodriguez had spent 2 years cultivating. During a routine count, James dropped a tiny paper note into Marcus's laundry. One word: progress? Marcus used a pencil stub to write on his palm during breakfast, memorizing the information before washing it away. 17 names, 3 corrupt guards, shipment schedule, Bratva contact information. Everything Rodriguez needed to start building the case. James collected the information during the next count, hidden in a routine pat-down. What Marcus didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that Viper had already identified James as a potential problem. And Viper was about to make a move that would shatter everything. Comment below. How long do you think Marcus can maintain this cover? The next part will shock you. On day 47, Viper changed the game entirely. He called Marcus to his cell block, the Brotherhood's territory, where even guards rarely ventured. Inside, Viper had set up what looked like a streaming studio. Camera, lights, audio equipment that shouldn't exist in a prison but did because Viper owned everyone who mattered. "The dark web pays good money for entertainment," Viper explained, adjusting the camera. "Underground fighting, degradation content, torture porn. I've been running streams for 3 years, made myself a fortune. But I've never had anyone like you." Marcus felt ice in his stomach. This was beyond what they'd anticipated. "Here's how this works," Viper continued. "Twice a week, we go live. Members pay premium prices to watch. They can request specific activities. And you're going to perform. Because if you don't, I've got contacts on the outside who can reach people you care about. Your mother? Still running that restaurant in Atlanta? Be a shame if something happened to her." It was a bluff. It had to be. Rodriguez had secured his family, moved them, protected them. But Marcus couldn't take that chance. The first stream went live that night. 3,000 viewers logged in from around the world, paying cryptocurrency to watch. Viper made Marcus stand in front of the camera, while Brotherhood members took turns humiliating him. Racial slurs, physical abuse, degradation that Marcus forced himself to endure by retreating deep into his meditation, into that place where he was water, where nothing could truly touch him. The viewers loved it. The streams became regular. Every Tuesday and Friday, after the drug shipments, Viper would force Marcus to perform. Sometimes it was cleaning cells, sometimes fighting other inmates, defending himself without ever throwing a strike. Sometimes worse. And Marcus documented it all. Every face in the room, every slip of information Viper let drop when he thought Marcus was too broken to notice. Every connection to the outside operation. But there was a cost. Marcus had trained his mind for resistance, but no human mind is infinite. The PTSD he'd carried since his father's murder was getting harder to control. His meditation was fracturing. He'd wake up at night with his hands around his own throat, muscle memory from fights trying to activate, his body begging him to fight back. In his cell, alone, Marcus would press his palm against the phoenix tattoo and whisper the words his mentor had taught him. To protect others, you must first sacrifice yourself. The greatest warrior is the one who never needs to fight. But what if he was wrong? What if his mentor's philosophy was just pretty words? What if violence was the only language monsters like Viper understood? On day 89, everything changed. During a Friday stream, Viper forced Marcus into a fighting demonstration. A Brotherhood member attacked him, full force. Marcus defended, slipping strikes, redirecting energy, using minimal movement. It was textbook defensive martial arts. But one of the 3,000 viewers recognized the technique. A screenshot started circulating on underground martial arts forums. Is this the Phantom? Olympic champion from 2019? Within 48 hours, the story exploded. A journalist covering underground fighting saw the forums, investigated, and broke the story. Olympic gold medalist. Discovered imprisoned and abused in Iron Gate Correctional. Marcus's cover was obliterated. The morning the story broke, Viper came to Marcus's cell alone. No guards. No Brotherhood members. Just the two of them. For the first time since entering Iron Gate, Marcus saw something unexpected in Viper's eyes. Not anger. Respect. You're not just a convict, Viper said quietly. You're a Fed. Or something like it. I should have seen it. No, one endures what you've endured without training, without purpose. Marcus said nothing. Here's the interesting part, Viper continued. I don't care. You've seen my operation, sure. But you're a prisoner with a fabricated identity. Any testimony you give is inadmissible. You've got nothing that can touch me legally. He leaned against the cell bars. But you've become a PR problem. The media's making you a martyr. That, I can't allow. Viper pulled out his cell phone contraband that he carried openly because the rules didn't apply to him. He made a call. Catherine? It's me. I need your services. Yes. The Olympic fighter story. I want him destroyed. Character assassination. Fabricated evidence. Whatever it takes. Make him the villain. Catherine Blackwood was the most expensive defense attorney in the South, famous for getting guilty clients acquitted and destroying whistleblowers. Within hours, she was on cable news, spinning a narrative. Marcus Chen was a disgraced, violent fighter who'd fabricated his imprisonment to gain fame. The abuse was staged. The evidence was fake. He was a fraud. Public opinion began to shift. The story that had initially sympathized with Marcus now questioned everything. Had he staged the whole thing? Was this an elaborate hoax? And then Viper made his masterstroke. He filed assault charges against Marcus, claiming Marcus had attacked Brotherhood members unprovoked. He produced edited video footage, fabricated testimony from inmates who'd been threatened or paid off. A legal case designed to bury Marcus under so much doubt that no jury would ever believe him. Marcus sat in his cell, watching his credibility disintegrate on the news, and wondered if he'd sacrificed everything for nothing. If this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button. The twist coming next will change everything. But Viper had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated Agent Sarah Rodriguez. Rodriguez had spent 3 months watching Marcus suffer through camera feeds, listening to him being degraded, knowing she couldn't extract him without compromising the mission. Every night, she went home to her daughter and felt like a monster for what she was putting Marcus through. She'd violated protocol 7 times to protect him, moved his mother without authorization, positioned tactical teams closer than approved, spent DEA resources tracking Viper's outside connections without official clearance. Her superiors had noticed. She was under investigation for insubordination, facing possible termination and criminal charges. But Rodriguez didn't care anymore. This wasn't about her career. This was about justice. When Catherine Blackwood launched her media campaign, Rodriguez made a decision. She was going to burn every bridge she had left. She called Marcus's attorney a public defender named Marcus Chen, no relation, who'd taken the case pro bono. I'm about to give you evidence that will end my career, Rodriguez said, but it'll also end Viper's empire. Are you ready? The trial was set for 3 weeks later. Catherine Blackwood arrived in a $1,000 suit, ready to eviscerate Marcus on the stand. The courtroom was packed with media, Brotherhood supporters, and civil rights activists who saw Marcus as either a hero or a fraud. Marcus sat at the defense table wearing prison orange, looking thinner than his Olympic photos. 3 months of systematic abuse had left marks that no amount of healing could hide. Blackwood's opening argument was surgical. She painted Marcus as a washed-up fighter, desperate for attention. A man who'd fabricated his entire story for fame and fortune. She presented the edited videos, the paid testimony, the assault charges. She made Marcus look dangerous, unstable, violent. "This man," she said, pointing at Marcus, "is not a victim. He's a predator who manipulated the system and is now manipulating you." The jury looked skeptical. Marcus's attorney looked overwhelmed. And then Rodriguez walked into the courtroom. She shouldn't have been there. She was under investigation, suspended from duty, forbidden from interfering. But she walked in anyway, carrying a locked briefcase, and approached the judge. "Your Honor, I'm Special Agent Sarah Rodriguez, DEA. I have evidence that's material to this case. Evidence that will prove Mr. Chen's innocence and expose a criminal conspiracy that spans 5 states and 3 countries." Catherine Blackwood objected. The judge should have denied the request. But the judge looked at Rodriguez, this woman who'd clearly sacrificed her career to be standing there, and said, "I'll allow it." Rodriguez opened the briefcase. Inside were 3 items: a micro camera disguised as prison-issue eyeglasses, a hard drive containing 127 days of footage, and a USB drive with encrypted files detailing Viper's entire criminal network. "For the past 4 months," Rodriguez said, "Marcus Chen has been operating as an undercover asset for the DEA. Everything he endured was part of a long-term investigation into Viper Crow's organization, and he documented everything." She plugged the hard drive into the courtroom's display system. The footage played. Real, unedited, devastating. Viper's drug operation, the shipments, the money laundering, the Bratva connections, the live streams, the systematic torture. All of it, captured through the microcamera Marcus had worn every single day. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Then Rodriguez played the audio files. Viper's own words, recorded during his streams, laying out his entire operation for paying viewers. Confessions, names, details, everything the DEA needed. Catherine Blackwood tried to object, to claim the evidence was illegally obtained, but she was drowning. The judge ordered an immediate recess. Within 30 minutes, federal agents raided Iron Gate. Viper was arrested on 47 counts, including racketeering, drug trafficking, hate crimes, and conspiracy to commit murder. 15 guards were arrested. 3 Brotherhood lieutenants were taken down. Simultaneously, coordinated raids across 5 states hit every node of Viper's network. The Bratva connection in Brighton Beach, the Los Fantasmas distribution hubs in Arizona and Texas, the money laundering operations in Miami. 47 arrests in 6 hours. 237 connected cases opened. A $75 million criminal empire dismantled in a single day. And it all came back to one man who'd spent 127 days refusing to fight back. But the story wasn't over. In fact, the worst was yet to come. Because on that same day, while federal agents were securing Iron Gate, James Mallory, the young guard who'd been Marcus's inside contact, was being driven to a warehouse by 3 Brotherhood members who'd escaped the raids. James had known this was coming. 3 days earlier, Viper had discovered James was the leak. Discovered that James had been feeding information to Rodriguez. Discovered that James's mother and younger sister were vulnerable, unprotected. Viper had given James a choice: betray Marcus completely, feed the feds false information that would lead to a failed raid and Marcus's death, or watch his family die. James had spent 2 years trying to do the right thing. 2 years drowning in guilt, taking bribes to pay for his mother's cancer treatment, then getting in too deep with Viper's organization. Marcus's mission had been his shot at redemption, but when it came down to choosing between justice and family, James chose family. He'd altered intel, fed Rodriguez false shipment schedules, nearly compromised the entire operation. His betrayal had led to Marcus enduring 3 additional weeks of torture that could have been prevented. Now, with Viper arrested and the raids complete, the Brotherhood members who'd escaped wanted revenge. They had James, they had his sister, and they were going to make examples of both. Rodriguez got the call at midnight. A video sent from an encrypted number. James and his sister, bound, in a warehouse somewhere. A voice off camera. The ghost broke our family. Now we break his. Marcus was in a hospital being treated for his injuries. When Rodriguez showed him the video, his face went white. Where? He asked. We don't know. They could be anywhere. We have teams searching. But Marcus pulled the IV from his arm. Stood up. I know where. The warehouse was in a condemned industrial district outside of Iron Gate, a place Marcus had memorized from conversations he'd overheard during his imprisonment. Viper's men used it for executions. 14 people had died there in the past 3 years. Rodriguez tried to stop Marcus from going. You're not a field agent. You're injured. We have tactical teams. They don't have time, Marcus said. And you know it. He was right. The Brotherhood members were on borrowed time. They'd move fast. Marcus took a DEA vehicle and drove there himself, alone, arriving 40 minutes before any tactical team could respond. The warehouse was exactly as he'd imagined. Dark, vast, filled with rusted machinery and shadows. 3 Brotherhood members were inside, along with James and his 16-year-old sister, both tied to chairs. Marcus walked through the main entrance, unarmed, still wearing hospital scrubs. The Brotherhood members recognized him immediately. Their leader, a man named Pike, who'd been Viper's second-in-command, smiled. The ghost. You broke my brother. Now I'm going to break you and everyone you tried to save. Marcus stood in the center of the warehouse, 20 feet from James and his sister, and for the first time, in 127 days, he let go of his control. The fight lasted 90 seconds. 3 men with knives and improvised weapons against 1 man in hospital scrubs. It shouldn't have been a contest. It wasn't. Marcus moved like the fighter he'd always been. Fluid, devastating, precise. But this wasn't Olympic Taekwondo. This wasn't controlled competition. This was survival. And Marcus unleashed everything he'd been restraining for 4 months. The first man went down with a shattered knee before he could draw his knife. The second managed 1 swing before Marcus disarmed him and put him through a rusted metal shelf. Pike, the leader, was bigger, stronger, and more experienced than the others. He lasted 12 seconds longer. When it was over, Marcus stood among 3 unconscious Brotherhood members, his hands shaking, his breathing ragged. The PTSD he'd been controlling for months was fully active now. His vision was tunneling. His body was moving on autopilot, ready to keep fighting even though the threat was neutralized. He looked down at his hands and saw his father's blood, saw his mentor's face, saw every person he'd failed to save. Marcus. James's voice, weak but steady. It's over. You did it. It's over. Marcus cut James and his sister free. Federal vehicles were screaming into the district, Rodriguez leading the tactical team. They'd traced Marcus's DEA vehicle. James collapsed into Marcus's arms. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I betrayed you. I altered the intel. I let them hurt you longer than necessary because I was trying to save my family. I'm a coward. I'm inhuman, Marcus said quietly. You made an impossible choice. And then you made the right one by helping Rodriguez anyway. That's not cowardice. That's courage. James's sister was crying, traumatized but alive. Rodriguez burst through the warehouse doors, weapon drawn, then lowered it when she saw Marcus standing there, surrounded by unconscious Brotherhood members. Are you okay? She asked. Marcus looked at her. This woman who'd sacrificed her career to protect him, who'd believed in him when the world didn't, who'd spent months living with the guilt of what she'd asked him to endure. No, he said honestly, but I will be. The aftermath took months to sort through. Catherine Blackwood was disbarred for fabricating evidence and witness tampering. Viper Crow received life without parole, plus 150 years on federal RICO charges. The Bratva connection was severed, leading to 89 additional arrests internationally. Los Fantasmas lost 3 distribution hubs and 11 lieutenants. Iron Gate Correctional underwent a complete administrative overhaul. The warden was fired. The corrupt guards were prosecuted. A new administration implemented rehabilitation-focused programs based directly on Marcus's recommendations. 3 congressional investigations were launched into private prison corruption. 14 states began reviewing their prison gang protocols. An international task force was formed targeting prison-based trafficking networks. Sarah Rodriguez was initially suspended, then quietly reinstated with a commendation. Her superiors recognized that without her insubordination, Viper's empire would still be operating. Her ex-husband dropped the custody suit. Her daughter got her mother back. James Mallory survived his injuries. He testified against the Brotherhood in exchange for immunity, then left law enforcement entirely. Last anyone heard, he was working construction in Montana, trying to rebuild his life away from the guilt. And Marcus? Marcus spent 3 months in psychiatric treatment, working through the PTSD that his imprisonment had exacerbated. The nightmares were severe. The flashbacks were worse. But he worked through them with the same discipline that had carried him through Iron Gate. When he finally emerged, he was different. Not broken, but transformed. Tempered. He wrote a memoir, The Phantom Protocol. 127 Days in Hell. A Lifetime of Purpose. It became a bestseller overnight. The proceeds went entirely to victim support funds. He spoke before the United Nations about prison reform and human trafficking. He testified before Congress about hate group radicalization. He became a documentary subject, his story reaching millions. But more importantly, Marcus founded the Phoenix Guard Initiative. The program started small. A martial arts studio in Atlanta, in the same neighborhood where his father had died. He taught self-defense to at-risk youth. But more than that, he taught them the philosophy his mentor had instilled in him. True strength isn't about dominating others. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. The program expanded. Within 2 years, Phoenix Guard had 15 locations across the country. They partnered with law enforcement for gang intervention. They offered job placement for reformed inmates. They created scholarship programs for minority athletes. They trained undercover operatives in psychological resilience techniques based on Marcus's experience. The recidivism rate for inmates who went through Phoenix Guard programs was 89% lower than the national average. 5 years after walking out of Iron Gate, Marcus returned to the prison one final time. Not as an inmate, not as an undercover operative, but as a free man leading the first Phoenix Guard workshop for inmates. The prison was unrecognizable. New warden, new guards, new philosophy. Rehabilitation over punishment. Education over isolation. Marcus stood in the yard where Viper had first confronted him, surrounded by 40 inmates who'd volunteered for the program. Most were young, angry, lost. Exactly like Marcus had been at 16, standing across the street watching his father die. My mentor taught me something, Marcus said. He said the strongest warriors are those who've survived hell and chose to build heaven for others. You've all been through hell. Some of you caused it. Some of you endured it. All of you have a choice now. You can let this place define you, or you can define yourself. He showed them the phoenix tattoo. This bird burns to ashes before it rises. That's not metaphor. That's truth. You have to let the gory, old version of yourself die before the new one can be born. And that death? It's agonizing. But it's necessary. An inmate raised his hand. Young kid, maybe 22, covered in Brotherhood ink that he was clearly trying to distance himself from. How do you forgive yourself for the things you did before you knew better? Marcus thought about James Mallory, about the betrayal that nearly cost him everything, about the impossible choices people make when they're desperate. You don't, Marcus said honestly. Not completely. The guilt stays with you, but you can transform it. Use it as fuel to make sure no one else has to make the same mistakes. You can't change your past, but you can absolutely change someone else's future. The kid nodded, tears in his eyes. After the workshop, Marcus walked through the facility one last time. Past the kitchen where he'd documented Viper's drug operation, past the shower room where he'd been beaten, past the cell where he'd spent 127 nights convincing himself not to give up. At the exit, Rodriguez was waiting. She'd taken a promotion, now running anti-trafficking operations for the entire Southeast region. They'd stayed in touch, meeting occasionally to debrief, to process, to heal. "You okay?" she asked. Marcus looked back at the prison, at the place that had nearly destroyed him but ultimately transformed him. "Yeah," he said. "I am." They walked to the parking lot together. Rodriguez's daughter was in the car, waiting. She'd brought a poster she'd made in school. "Agent Rodriguez, my hero." Sarah had it framed in her office. Marcus got in his car, a simple sedan, nothing flashy. On the passenger seat was a stack of letters from kids in Phoenix Guard programs, telling him how the training had changed their lives, how they'd avoided gang recruitment, how they'd learned to control their anger, how they'd found purpose. He drove back to Atlanta, back to his studio, back to the work. That night, teaching a class of teenagers, Marcus demonstrated the same defensive techniques he'd used in Iron Gate. The same flowing movements, the same redirecting of energy, the same philosophy. Protect without destroying. A student asked him the same question he got in every interview, every speech. "Did you ever want to fight back? Did you ever want to hurt them?" Marcus thought about Viper's face when the verdict was read, about the Brotherhood members who'd received justice through the legal system, not through violence, about James's redemption, about Rodriguez's sacrifice, about the 16 bodies in El Paso who'd been avenged, not through revenge, but through the systematic dismantling of the empire that had killed them. Every day, Marcus admitted, every single day for 127 days, I wanted to fight back. I had the skill. I had the justification. But my mentor taught me something important. The moment you let hate control your actions, you become no different from the people you're fighting against. Real strength is choosing mercy when you have the power to destroy. That's what separates justice from revenge. He showed them the Phoenix tattoo one more time. You want to know the secret? You have to be willing to burn, to endure, to suffer. Not because suffering is noble, but because some things are worth the pain. Protecting others, creating change, building something better than what exists. That's worth burning for. The class continued. Marcus taught them defense, discipline, control. But more than that, he taught them hope. 10 years after Iron Gate, the Phoenix Guard Initiative had grown into an international organization. 127 locations across 23 countries. Over 50,000 youth served. Partnerships with prisons, schools, community centers, law enforcement agencies. The Ghost Warriors Foundation, what Phoenix Guard had evolved into, became the gold standard for rehabilitation and youth intervention programs. The recidivism data was irrefutable. The success stories were legion. Marcus Chen, once known as the Phantom, the undefeated fighter who'd never been touched, became known for something else. The man who'd endured 127 days of hell and transformed it into hope for hundreds of thousands of people. He never married, never sought fame beyond what was necessary to spread the message, lived simply, taught constantly, and invested every resource into the mission. On the 10th anniversary of his release, Marcus returned to the cemetery where his father was buried. He hadn't been there in years. The headstone was weathered now, the grass overgrown. Marcus knelt down, touched the Phoenix tattoo over his heart. "I did it, Dad," he whispered. "I found the men who killed you. Not the ones who were actually there, they're long gone, but the system that protected them, the ideology that justified it, the empire built on hate. I broke it. It took everything I had, but I broke it." He stood up, looked at the Atlanta skyline in the distance. "And I built something better." This is Crime Nest Stories, where we uncover the truth behind injustice and celebrate the courage to fight back, sometimes by never fighting at all. Marcus Chen's story reminds us that true strength isn't found in dominance or violence, but in the unwavering commitment to protect others, even when it costs us everything. His 127 days in Iron Gate dismantled a $75 million criminal empire, reformed an entire prison system, and inspired international change. But more than that, his story proves that one person, willing to endure hell, can transform the world for countless others. If this story moved you, if it challenged you, if it inspired you, do 3 things. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss stories like this. Like this video to help it reach people who need to hear this message. And comment below. Tell us about a time you had to show strength through restraint. Share this story with someone who needs to know that suffering can have purpose. The greatest warriors aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who rise from the ashes again and again and use their scars to light the way for others. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay purposeful, and remember, true power is protecting those who can't protect themselves.